Hello, I'm Alicia Reynolds,
And this is Amy Teig.
and we will be discussing in this video a user-friendly guide for parents with a special needs child who will be going through the CSE process. Before we start, we think it will be helpful to give you definitions of some key terms and acronyms that will be used throughout the video.
So we already used one term, CSE, which stands for Committee on Special Education. It is a multidisciplinary team appointed by the Board of Education. The CSE is responsible for students with disabilities from ages 5 to 21. An Individualized Education Program, IEP, is a written statement of the educational program designed to meet a child's individual needs. Every child who receives special education services must have an IEP. That's why the process of developing this vital document is of great interest and importance to educators, administrators, and families alike. The Individuals with Disabilities Act IDEA is a federal law that requires schools to serve the educational needs for eligible students with disabilities. Schools must evaluate students suspected of having disabilities, including learning disabilities. Not every child with learning and attention issues qualifies for special education services under IDEA. The Functional Behavioral Assessment (FBA) is a variation on procedures originally developed to ascertain the purpose or reason for behaviors displayed by individuals with severe cognitive or communication disabilities. Curriculum-based measurement, or CBM, is a means of tracking educational progress through direct assessment of academic skills in reading, mathematics, writing, and spelling. Your child's present level of educational performance, or PLOP, is the last term we're going to talk about. This is a thorough description of your child's current abilities, skills, weaknesses, and strengths. It's the part of the IEP that explains how your child's learning issues affect his ability to learn the general education curriculum. PLOP includes details on how your child handles academic subjects in everyday or functional activities like socializing.
Now we're going to move on to what exactly the Individualized Education Plan, or IEP, really means. The purpose of the IEP is to set reasonable learning goals for a child and to state the services that the school district will provide for the child. If your child receives special education services, then he or she must have an individualized education program. That's the law. An IEP is an important legal document, and it spells out your child's learning needs, the services the school will provide, and how progress will be measured. Several people, including parents, are involved in creating the document, and the entire process can be a great way to sort out your child's strengths and weaknesses. There are two components when finding out who qualifies for an IEP. The first one being an evaluation. Parents, teachers, a counselor, a doctor, or anyone else who suspects a child is struggling can request to have an evaluation. The school psychologist and other professionals may give your child various tests, and they also may observe your child in the classroom. The second component is a decision. The IEP team, which includes parents and other school officials, decide whether or not your child needs special education services in order to learn the general education curriculum. IDEA says that having any of the 13 disabilities may qualify a child for special education services. When does an IEP meeting take place? An IEP meeting must be held within 30 calendar days after it is determined through a full evaluation that the child has one of the disabilities listed in IDEA and needs special education and related services. It must be reviewed at least annually thereafter to determine whether the goals are being achieved and being revised appropriately. Now that we've talked about the purpose of the IEP and when the IEP should be held, let's talk about what your child's IEP will contain. The IEP will contain the child's present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, or the PLOP. This will describe how the child is doing in school and how the child's disability affects his or her involvement and progress in the general curriculum. It will list annual goals for the child, meaning what parents and the school team think he or she can reasonably accomplish in the year. The special education and related services to be provided to the child, including supplementary aids and services, such as a communication device, and changes to the program or supports for school personnel. It will contain how much of the school day the child will be educated separately from non-disabled children or not participate in extracurricular or other non-academic activities such as lunch or clubs. How and if the child is to participate in state and district-wide assessments, including what modifications to tests the child may need. When services and modifications will begin, how often they will be provided will also be on the IEP, where they will be provided, and how long they will last. Finally, how school personnel will measure the child's progress towards the annual goal will be listed on the IEP. These different points of interest on the IEP will be discussed every meeting that you have.
We touched a little bit in the last section on parent and school involvement in the CSE process, but it is important to know who is directly involved in the creation and implementation of your child's IEP. As a parent, the role is to support the student, provide information about the student's strengths, interests, needs, independent living skills, and kinds of support needed to achieve desired post-high school outcomes. A general education teacher can assist the student in identifying post-secondary goals, can assist in planning courses of study in general education curriculum, identify and provide modifications, adaptations, and supports, identify and provide positive behavioral strategies and interventions, and they can also monitor student progress. A school administrator is a member of the school district who knows about the general education curriculum and the resources available to the school. This person must also be qualified to provide or supervise special education services. The special education teacher is a specialist about disabilities and individualized instruction. He or she understands how and when to use different teaching styles and instructional methods to meet your child's needs. Usually, the special education teacher has been involved in your child's evaluation, understands the results, and explain and interpret the results. The evaluation personnel is someone who knows about your child's evaluation, what the evaluation results were, and what the results mean in terms of instruction. This could be a school psychologist, an administrator, or one of your child's teachers. This person provides assessment information about student needs, interests, preferences, strengths, and aptitudes. They will interpret assessment information for students and family. Lastly, the child needs to be involved. If the IEP team will be talking about how to prepare your child for life after high school, also called transition planning, your child must be invited to the meeting. Otherwise, deciding when and how your child will participate in the IEP meeting is a decision you and your child can make. Students are encouraged to take part in developing their own IEPs. Some students in elementary school come to the meeting just to learn a little about the process or to share information about themselves. As students get older, they take a more active role. The student communicates preferences, interests, strengths, areas of need, and types of supports needed as well.
We've talked about who's involved in the process, and a key member is you, the parent. So, what is something that you can do before having your child's IEP meeting? Some things you can do is review the information on your child. From home, school, or private sources like a doctor or a therapist, you can ask yourself, do these records show the full picture of my child? If not, you can fill in the missing pieces. Bring past records in of your child's doctor's history or any other information that you feel the need to share during the meeting. Your child is another member of the team, and it is important to discuss with them about their upcoming IEP meeting. Ask them questions about school, like what things are hard for them and what things are easy, and what may be important to focus on this year. They may or may not have a lot to say about their needs and interests, and it's important to come into the meeting with that information. It's important to think about your child's involvement in their general education classes. Consider their learning styles and their special education needs or social needs that you may want to talk about in the meeting. If your child is attending the meeting, let them know how important it is for them to share their opinions and give their input on what they feel they need in their school day. As a parent, you can bring something called a positive student profile to the meeting. Things that are on this profile can just be a list of questions and answers. Questions such as, who is your child? You can describe your child, including information like their place in the family, their personality, their likes and their dislikes. What are your child's strengths? What are your child's weaknesses? What are their successes? What is their greatest challenge? What are their needs? What are their dreams? And any other helpful information that you think should be included. Other things you can do as a parent to prepare for the IEP meeting is you can brainstorm with other people, such as a teacher, a friend, family members, a tutor, a therapist, and come up with ideas before the meeting. You can ask other team members if they share their ideas with your child's program ahead of time. You can know your rights, review the idea regulations and the summaries that go along with that. Are there any areas where you and the school might disagree? And consider whether you'd like to invite another person to go with you. 3 things you should do in an IEP meeting are: first, stay focused. Make sure you're taking notes throughout the meeting. Second, ask questions. If something comes up that you don't fully understand, ask right away. You don't want to leave the meeting having unknowns. And third, be thorough. Make sure that you understand all the language being used, and try not to move away from one area until you're confident that it adequately addresses your child's needs. There are some different tips that you can take away as a parent who's just being introduced to the CSE meeting process. The first one is you can contact the IEP team leader when you have concerns. The second is you should be sure to refer to the IEP during your regular parent-teacher conferences. Above all, remember that the IEP needs to reflect your child's current needs. Connect with other parents who have experiences with IEPs. You can refuse the entire proposed IEP that was given to your child, and you can also ask for another meeting to discuss your concerns. Now that you have sat through the CSE meeting and your child has been given an IEP, what happens if you have a dispute? There are several things as a parent that you can do. 1, you can ask for a mediation session. 2, you can file a due process complaint. 3, you can hold a resolution session. 4, you could file a civil lawsuit. Or 5, when an agreement is reached, get it in writing.
In regards to ethical and legal issues that may arise, the counselor's role is as follows. Conduct periodic evaluations for the purpose of establishing and continuing eligibility of students for special education services and for reassessing their needs and continued eligibility. When the students are identified, school counselors work with the MDT to ensure that the legally sound plans are in place and implemented effectively. School counselors must be aware of the rights afforded to students and their parents regarding school records, such as laws that govern the confidentiality of school records, what are considered to be exceptions, and the nature of privileged communication. School counselors will encounter legal and ethical dilemmas, such as those pertaining to student confidentiality, dual relationships with faculty, parental rights, and acting on student danger to themselves or others. Some examples of ethical and legal issues school counselors may face include the issue of medication and bullying and sexual harassment.
Now that we've given you all this information on what the CSE process is, here are some resources for you to take home. The Center for Parent Information and Resources. It's a summary of transition, ideas, definition of transition services, and the domains of adulthood. The Council for Learning Disabilities is made up of members and the roles they play in the CSE process. PACER's National Parent Center on Transition and Employment provides tools in community education, home living, employment, and recreation. And finally, Allegheny County Family Resource Center covers key areas in order to plan a life beyond high school years. Here are some tips to take home with you. The first tip is come prepared to your child's CSE meeting. This would include past medical history, educational struggles, strengths, and other weaknesses.
Contact the IEP team leader when you have concerns. It's important to have all people involved with good communication.
The final tip is to remember that your child's IEP needs to reflect their current needs. Your child is going to progress in school, master certain skills, and acquire new knowledge, and they may even run into new challenges. That's why it's important for their IEP to evolve. Now that we have given you information about the IEP, we hope that it will make your transition into the CSE process an easy and reassuring experience for both you and your child.